So let's take a look at the first worksheet. What questions do you have from worksheet number 1? Michaela? 4. Excellent. Yep, of course. So number 4, let me make sure it's the right one. Number 4 says x minus 3. Is that the one it starts with? Awesome. So x minus 3 is equal to a negative 5 and 1/2. Okay. So everyone has a marking pen in their hand. You're all taking a look at number 4, please. Okay, so what I need to do, what I'm going to do first of all is do adding the opposite here. That way I know what operation I really have. I have x plus a negative 3. All right, so Michaela, I need to add a positive 3 to both sides. Now, 3, if I was to make a fraction here, this would be 3 and 0 halves. Do you agree with that? Awesome. Okay, so now I have the 3 and the negative 3 cancel each other out, so I simply have a 1x, which is what I wanted. Now I'm adding two numbers with different signs, which means I'm subtracting. Now this is the proper order, because the greater absolute value is on the top. If you want to see that correctly, you can rewrite that, but you can also, since it's already in the right order, I can leave it. 1/2 minus 0 halves is a 1/2. 5 minus 3 is 2. The 5 had the greater absolute value, and it was negative. Does that help you? Awesome. What else can I do from worksheet number 1? Jack? All right, let's take a look at 7. 7 said I have 2 and 1/10 times n is equal to 1 and 1/6. Is this the one you're talking about? Awesome. I have multiplication here. Since I have multiplication between the fraction and the variable, I need to change these into improper fractions. So I end up with 21/10 times n is equal to 7/6. Are you cool with that so far? Awesome. My coefficient is 21/10. So I need to multiply that by its reciprocal to turn it into a 1. And I have to do the same thing to both sides. So my 10/21 and my 21/10 cancel each other out. I get a 1n, which is what I wanted. And now I'm going to divide out common factors on the right. 7 divides into itself once and divides into 21 3 times. 2 divides into 6 3 times. 2 divides into 10 5 times. So I end up with, in the numerator, 1 times 5, which is 5, and 3 times 3, which is 9, and it's all positive, so there's my answer. Does that help you? Jack? Excellent. What else can I do? Christiana? Let's take a look at 9. Number 9 said 5 and 2/7 plus k is equal to 2 and 27/70. Is this the one you're talking about? Excellent. All right, I have addition between my variable and my fraction. So I'm leaving the mixed numbers as they are. I do need a common denominator because I have to use addition to get my variable alone. So I'm going to use 70 as my common denominator. So I'm going to multiply 2/7 by 10 over 10, and I get 20/70. So I end up with 5 and 20/70 plus k is equal to 2 and 27/70. Are you cool so far? Awesome. So I'm going to add a negative 5 and 20/70 to both sides. So I end up with my 1k. I'm adding a positive and a negative. I need the bigger absolute value to go on the top, so I am going to rewrite this. I have 5 and 20/70 minus 2 and 27/70. Well, I always subtract the top minus the bottom. We put the greater absolute value on the top. We always do the top minus the bottom. So here I do have to borrow, because I have 20/70 minus 27/70, and I have a whole number to borrow from. So I'm going to take that 5 and I'm going to make it a 4. I'm going to turn that 1 into 70 over 70, and I'm going to add it to my 20/70. So I have 4 and 90/70 minus 2 and 27/70. Are you cool so far? Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and subtract. So that becomes an 8, it's a 1, 3, 63/70ths. 2, greater absolute value was negative. 63 is 7 times 9, right? So that 63 becomes a 9, that 70 becomes a 10. So this is negative 2 and 9/10. This is definitely the type I'm giving you again. God bless you. Where you've got borrowing, you have to simplify it. God bless you. What else do you guys have for me from worksheet 1? Frankie? 20. Were you guys able to be pretty productive in class and work on a good portion of this in class? Why some of you are saying yes and some of you are saying no? It can't be both. How did you guys have 5 minutes? Reconciliation didn't start till 9. Yes, I know, but there was you had 20-minute class, not more than that. We started 20 after. Okay, I don't know. You guys had plenty. You guys should have had time to get started. Oh, oh well. Sorry. All right, let's take a look at number 20. I have negative 9/19 is equal to n plus a negative 11. All right, so this is addition, which means I have to use addition to get my variable alone. So I'm going to add an 11 to both sides. All right, there's several ways that you can do this. The easiest way is to treat that 11 as a mixed number. So I'm going to write this subtraction over here. So I have 11 minus 9/19. Well, 11 is the same thing as 11 and 0/19. I would expect you guys to know that. So from here, I can go ahead and borrow. So the 11 becomes a 10. I'm going to change that 1 into 19 over 19. So I have 10 and 19/19 minus 9/19. Well, 19 minus 9 is 10. And 10 minus 0 is 10. So I have n is equal to positive 10 and 10/19. Questions on that? All right, what else can I do for you guys? Christiana? All right, I do have to move on. All right, so I'm not going to do all of these. We've done enough of these that hopefully you can find your mistakes if you go back and look for them. All right, we are going to switch after this one to the second worksheet. So I have 9k over 65 is equal to 1 and 316 over 845. I'm not giving you numbers this big. All right, the first thing I would see is if 845 is divisible by 65. That's the first thing I would try. All right, because if it is divisible, then that 845 is our common factor, common denominator, and that is. Oh, we don't need a common denominator because there's multiplication going on here. That's even better. All right, so this 9 times k over 65, that's the same thing as 9 over 65 times k. All right, so that's 845 plus 316, which gives me, for an improper fraction, 1,161 over 845. Now I'm going to multiply my coefficient by its reciprocal. My coefficient and its reciprocal cancel each other out, so I'm left with a 1k, which is what I wanted. All right, 65 divides into itself once. It divides into 845 13 times. All right, 1,061, so that's 6 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, so that is 9. So it is divisible by 9. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and divide that by 9, and I get 129. All right, so I end up with, this is a 1, I end up with 129 over 13. did that right. Yep. And then I would change that into a mixed number. All right, 129 divided by 13 is going to give me 9. So off to the side, I'm doing 129 divided by 13. That's going to be a 9. All right, 13 times 9 is going to give me 117. If I subtract that from 129, I get 12. All right, so this is 9 and 12/13, and it's positive. All right, let's jump to the second worksheet. What can I do on worksheet number 2? What can I do on worksheet number 2? Emerson? 5. All right, so number 5 said I have -2 and 14/15 is equal to -2 and 1/5. Is this the one you're talking about, sweetie? Awesome. All right, so I have multiplication between my variable and my fraction. So I have to change these into improper fractions. All right, so 15 times 2 is 30, plus 14 is 44. So I end up with -44/15 is equal to -11/5 times n. That's 30, 44. Yep. Now I'm going to multiply both sides by a -5/11, the coefficient of my fraction of my n, the reciprocal. So -5/11. The -5 becomes a -1. The 15 becomes a 3. The 11 becomes a 1. The -44 becomes a -4. So -1 times -4 is a +4. 1 times 3 is 3. So n is equal to a +4/3 or a +1 and 1/3. You go with that? Mateo, sit up. Thank you. Here. Number 3. Number 3 said I have -2 is equal to 3/2 times a. Is this the one you're talking about? Awesome. Mateus, do you need to stand up, sweetie? Okay, because I have a tall table there. You can stand up. That might be helpful. If you'd like to, you're more than welcome to. All right, so here, this -2 is the same thing as a -2/1. That's something to remember. So if I have a -2/1 is equal to 3/2 times a. Well, I multiply my 3/2 by its reciprocal, which is 2/3, and I'm going to do that on both sides. So I'm multiplying both sides by 2/3. So my 2/3 and my 3/2 cancel each other out, and I get a 1a, which is what I wanted. I can't divide out common factors here because my 2's are in my numerator and my 3's in my denominator, so I just have to multiply. So I get a -4/3 or a -1 and 1/3. Are you good with that? Awesome. What else can I do from worksheet number 2? Alex? Number 8? All right. Number 8 said I have v minus 2 is equal to -1 and 3/5. All right. I think that I'm seeing a little bit of a pattern going on here. So when you have to add or subtract a mixed number and an integer, I think we're forgetting that we need to turn the integer into a mixed number. All right, we have to change that into a mixed number. Go, Layla, you can go ahead and move it. Just slide it right on over next to that desk over there. Thank you. All right, so first of all, Alex, I'm going to do adding the opposite here. All right, and then I'm going to add a +2 to both sides. So my 2 and my -2 cancel each other out, and I get a 1v, which is what I wanted. All right, well, I'm adding a +2 to both sides. So I'm adding a positive and negative together. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract their absolute values with that 2 being on top. So I have 2 minus 1 and 3/5. How can I write 2 with a fraction next to it so I can actually do this subtraction with this fraction? Frankie? Excellent. I have 2 and 0/5. That's almost like when you have something like this. If we have 352 minus 1.6, what do we we have to do in this tenths column? Christiana? You do. You've got to put a 0 in there. So you can go ahead and do some borrowing if you need to. All right? It's the same thing with this. Christiana, you're paying attention to what I'm doing. Not talking. So now I have to borrow. I'm turning that 2 into a 1, and I'm taking that 1 and I'm adding it to my 0/5. I'm adding 5/5 to it. So I have 1 and 5/5 minus 1 and 3/5. Now I can go ahead and do this. So I end up with 2/5. So I have 2/5. My 2 was a greater absolute value. It was positive, so it's a positive 2/5. Does that help you? Awesome. Kira? Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Oh, gosh, no. You have to show me that. Yep, thank you for asking. Absolutely. You have to show me that. It's a great question. Okay, what else can I do from this worksheet? Christiana? I'm sorry? Number 2. So I have b plus 1 is equal to a negative 2 and 1/3. Christiana, what do I have to add to my positive 1 to make it a 0? So I'm going to add a negative 1 to both sides. All right? Well, this, again, this negative 1 is the same thing as negative 1 and 0/3. Here, I'm just adding two numbers with the same sign, so we can go ahead and simply add them. So 1/3 plus 0/3 is 1/3. Negative 2 plus negative 1 is a negative 3. So b is simply equal to a negative 3 and 1/3. All right, I'll take one last question. Nothing? All right, you guys have a homework quiz. So put this away, get a piece of paper out.